next up, we have a talk that will help you overcome mistakes as a founder. From Binary Builders, please welcome Noam Cohen.
Hello. Hey, thank you. All right, good morning, happy Monday. It's good to see y'all. You might know this story, a story that probably a lot of you have gone through. You're kind of young, you're a student maybe, you learn about blockchain, you're a developer, you get started, Ethereum, maybe Solidity, a lot of documentation available, you make your first smart contract, it's very exciting. And at some point, you end up in Cosmos for some reason. It's a very hospitable community here, online, you know. You see how, but anyway, you end up in Cosmos, and you make some friends, and you start building something. You notice, like, hey, here's a problem. We could fix this. Maybe something wrong with the tooling. Maybe there's something wrong with the infrastructure that you can fix. Maybe there's a market that you can create. You start building this thing, and over time, you realize there's a real demand for what we're doing right now. And then suddenly people start asking questions. When are you going live? When are you launching? And then you realize, like, oh, shit, are we really doing this? Are we building a blockchain? Are we building a dApp? Are we going to have to create a company? Are we going to launch a token? What kind of legal structure do we need? Oh, we need to go to market. What about fundraising? How are we going to get the millions we need to build this out? And so this is a common story that a lot of people go through, and if you haven't already, it's a fair chance that you will in a couple of years if you're in part of this group. And so what I would like to do, and what we do with the Interchain Builders Program, we try to help people from, going from POC basically to Mainnet, and of course beyond as well. And so today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some of the mistakes that we commonly see founders make, how to avoid them, and then how the Builders Program can help you out. So my name is Noam. I do a bunch of things, but basically 2 years ago I joined Interchain as the developer relations lead, or developer relations engineer at the hub. I became the lead, and I worked on the developer portal and the Interchain Developer Academy together with a great team, B9 Lab. After a while, I moved to Binary Builders, a new company that started out basically this year, and I was part of the Builders Program. We are also the primary maintainers of the Cosmos SDK, and we run Numia data analytics, and we have a validator. I like to make video games, I like to make music, and I guess like a new hobby of mine that I should have put up there is trying to solve maybe the hardest problem in crypto right now, which is how to come to an agreement of what to do with the hub. So the first mistake you can make when you launch a blockchain is launching a blockchain. It's very often you don't actually need a token or a blockchain. And what we mostly see is that people have a hard time monetizing their product. So they're sort of like, they have a good idea, there is some demand for it, but they just can't figure out how to get money for this. And this is sometimes a technical problem, but more often than not, this is a business model issue. And this monetizing thing is also an issue when it comes to fundraising. So they go through the fundraising, the whole shebang, and then they try to have these conversations, nobody's interested, and then they decide like, oh, what if we launch a token? Then we can sell our token. And then they go through the whole process again, and then at some point, nobody bites, but they already built their blockchain, and then they're gonna go to Mainnet, because they're like, oh, well, then we have some liquidity, and we can sell that, but the product is still shit, right? So you just gotta have a functioning business model. I mean, sometimes you don't, sometimes you just want users, and that is also a very viable path, but you need to have some kind of idea of like, how are you gonna like turn that into like maybe the profitable business at some point. Another big mistake, so let's say you go do launch a token, it makes sense, you need it for some reason. A lot of times you see teams come in with their pitch deck and they have their tokenomics sorted out before they have the go-to-market strategy. And this is actually kind of a strange thing, because tokenomics is really just about, as an organization, assuming your blockchain is an organization, what do we decide to spend on, right? And a blockchain is actually just like, okay, we need to incentivize certain behavior, that's what we're spending on. We have operational costs, security, and we want to incentivize certain behavior. And without knowing what behavior you want to incentivize, without knowing who your customers are, you don't really know what to do. Because your network effect is really a chicken and egg issue most of the time. But when you really do market research, and you can understand that the egg comes first, right? So normally what you would do, and this is a bit more tricky in like novel situations, but in ordinary situations, like for example, starting a permissionless layer 1 blockchain, what you really want is you want to get the devs to build the apps so that the users come and the liquidity comes. So what do? You incentivize the devs. That's sort of a traditional way to approach it. With DEXs, you incentivize liquidity pools. This is obvious, but once you start building new things, and that's more common in Cosmos, because we are at this frontier technology. We're building new infrastructure layers, things that we didn't know were problems, we're trying to solve them. It's much harder to figure out who are these customers, what value are we providing them, What's a suitable pricing model? How do we structure this? And without knowing this, you don't really know how much tokens you need to mint, how much you need to emit over time. So it's like one of those things where we try to help. One of the first things I'm trying to do when we used to pitch like of a team, and I see a tokenomics and I see no go-to-market strategy. I'm like, hey, hold up, let's back up for a second. So like, who are you selling this to, right? That's the first question, really. So anyway, let's say you sort this out and you have, you got your go-to-market strategy, you got everything figured out. And then the next thing you can do is maybe launch a token without a legal wrapper. And this is something we see people do sometimes. Sometimes they do it with a legal wrapper, but it's kind of messy. And the legal side of things isn't fun at all. You just want to be building. You just want to be, just having fun and doing the thing that you do. Maybe even, talk to folks a lot about the product. The last thing you want to do is like sit around with lawyers and talk about what you need to do in order to protect yourself from launching a token. But the thing is, if you launch a token, you are legally liable in most cases. And especially if you have absolutely no incorporation or no entity behind it, and your DAO is on-chain and code is law, and you have a bunch of folks from different countries, then every country can claim jurisdiction on what you're trying to do, and that's pretty dangerous. But like more commonly though, people do have a developer company set up, and that's very normal. But what's very hard to try to navigate, especially if you're a new founder, is that the fact that, okay, well, if you're in the US, you're probably going to need a token issuing company, and that should be a special purpose vehicle. And when you actually have the token and you want to set up a treasury, you need a foundation. Well, where do you do that? What country is best? So what we do is we work with a legal partner. They're called Legal Notes, and we provide a sort of like a free 2-hour roadmap session where you basically work with a legal expert on, and by the way, I'm not a legal expert, so don't take anything as a recommendation. But like what we do is we work with legal experts, and we try to help teams go through this process. So like where do we incorporate? How much is this going to cost? How long is it going to take me? How many months before mainnet do I need to have this set up? How do I get legal counsel? Do you have any tips? That kind of stuff. So okay, you launch your token, or maybe you don't even launch it yet, but you're trying to fundraise, or you're trying to communicate to the world that you have this token. And then you start maybe doing another really big mistake, which is actually pricing your token before it sort of like hits the secondary markets. So this is changing. In the past, this is really a fundraising issue. And in the past, teams would raise under this instrument called a SAFT. And I'm not going to go into much in detail, but basically it tells you that you sell this many tokens for this specific price. And when you do that, it's kind of a problem because you don't want to be pricing your token, because the SEC and the IRS are very happy when you do that, and they're going to have a job, because basically when you price your token, when you look at the Howey test, which is a investment of money in a common enterprise with the expectation of profit. If you as a founding team are a decision maker on this price, through a fundraising instrument, for example, or through marketing documentation, or through a public sale, then that central entity and that expectation of profit suddenly becomes a lot more easy to argue about that that's the case in your situation. So if you don't want to be a security, you want to go about it in a different way. So you don't want to price your token. The second thing, when it comes to the tax man, let's say you're a founder and you're launching your token, and it's mainnet, and you get a distribution. Maybe you get 1 million tokens. So if those 1 million tokens were priced at maybe $1 million, let's keep it easy, then you suddenly receive $1 million. But most of the time, those tokens will be vesting for 4 or 5 years, I don't know. You don't have the liquidity to pay for the tax bill that comes with that. So that's a real issue. So if you can keep your price to zero, until way after mainnet maybe, and public launch is happening later, then you're better off as an individual in terms of like the SEC knocking on your door and the tax man knocking on your door. So final mistake. And this again has to do with decentralization, again with the securities laws and all that as well. This is this insufficient decentralization thing, and I'm sort of I was sort of like alluding to this already. The Genesis file. There's a lot more into it than really most people think. Most of the time it's like, okay, we're putting the validator transactions in there. We're putting the the token distribution in there, and what you see very often is that you can actually put a lot more in there. And there's this thing called a soft launch on Mainnet, and it's just becoming a little bit more popular right now. But the soft launch Mainnet, usually people look at it from a sort of technical component, meaning that you launch, but you don't really have, for example, token transfers or staking rewards enabled. And this is sort of the soft launch, check if everything is really working, and then you do your final push, and then you sort of saved your ass. It's like, if you launch on Mainnet, something goes wrong on day one. We've seen some stuff happen. It's not so good for your reputation, right? So that's generally why people do a soft launch. But what we're trying to figure out, we're doing research about this right now, because it is very Cosmos specific. But you can also launch and you can just disable IBC token transfers, for example. IBC internal token transfers, staking rewards. And what you do then, and this is like an ideal situation, you launch everything, and then you do the airdrop. And then you distribute the voting power over people. Airdrops, people think it's a PR thing, and it is, obviously. But what you're really trying to do as a founder, you're trying to distribute the power. Because you don't want to be the decision-making entity behind what the blockchain is doing. Again, for this like securities law, basically. And so once you have the airdrop and you have distributed the voting power, then the community can decide to open up IBC, to open up token transfers, to enable protocol fees, to enable staking rewards. So that you as a founder, you haven't been there to turn this token into a profitable revenue-driving thing, but also that you're not there to create secondary markets. Because when you open up IBC, somebody can create a public liquidity pool, and you want to be as far away from that decision as possible. Same thing with a public sale. Don't do a public sale. But if you're doing a public sale, you don't want to be doing a public sale. You want the community to be doing a public sale with the community pool and the revenue of that public sale going back to the community pool again. This is tricky, right? All of this is contextual. Your company might be doing something entirely different. Maybe you are a DEX. It's weird to do a soft launch without IBC. That makes sense. And so what we try to do is we try to like help teams through that process. We just, we have these observations. We know what's the ideal scenario. We also know that maybe, yes, you did raise on a SAFT agreement. So let's try to make it work. So we help teams throughout all this process. So yeah, the Builders Program, the Interchain Builders Program is a public goods program that the ICF is funding. And yeah, we just help teams throughout this whole process. And we have 3 tracks. We got the accelerator track, the orientation track, and the integration track. And the accelerator track is how we started last year. We're just trying to get you from POC to Mainnet, and we also help teams beyond this, but we help you with fundraising. We have a huge network of VCs. We work with you on your pitch deck. We do legal strategy, like I just talked about, basically. We also have technical support. We have the Cosmos SDK primary maintainers in our team. It's a big team. We're doing really well. We have close ties with the ICF, of course, and the IBC team and everyone else in the ecosystem. Marketing and go-to-market strategies, we help you with this. Token economics, it's a personal joy to dig into token economics for me personally. So we do that a lot as well. And then we help out with partnerships. And I think the biggest value add that we have here is the network of people that we have and the experience that we can leverage externally as well. So something that's new is that we're doing this thing called the orientation track. This is for new teams when they're deciding like where do we want to build. And this has been notoriously difficult in Cosmos. So, if you're new and you're just like, okay, I want to build in Cosmos, where do you start? That's a hard part already, but there's documentation. But let's say you want to talk to Cosmos. How do you do that, right? Like when you come into Polygon or Near and you want to talk to that team or even Substrate and the whole situation there are people that you can talk to. There's a more centralized approach to BD, DevRels, and product strategy and all that. And for us, it's just a decentralized. It's pretty crazy. And this is one of the big problems that we're hearing people complain about. It's like, how do I get started? Who do I talk to? So we're trying to be this thing for the inbound funnel, at least, to try to help folks make that decision. And we try to understand the product that you're trying to build and whether or not the Cosmos architecture makes sense for you. Maybe you need to do a Cosmos contract, maybe a chain, maybe a roll-up, maybe Celeste is for you, or maybe Cosmos doesn't make any sense, although that's never the case. Yeah, we help people make introductions and try to understand the ecosystem. Another thing is this integration track. So this is for existing teams that are looking to expand. And that's, we have, for example, 2 teams in the Builders Program right now, Hypersign and Syntropy. And, they are natively ERC, they were like EVM projects. And Hypersign has been moving to Cosmos slowly. And Syntropy is thinking about this. And so we try to help them make the connections. A lot of this is really about partnerships, and it makes a lot of sense for them to move. We're just trying to help them with that extra little push. So something we're doing really soon is the Builders Knowledge Hub. So a lot of this stuff that we're learning and exploring and helping people with is great for the teams that are on the program. But there's a lot of people out there who are starting companies and they can't make it, of course, to this program. So we figured why not open source all the information that we have here. So we're building out this Builders Knowledge Hub where a lot of these topics that I just talked about you can get help with, or it explains what sort of the common problems are. We're trying to launch this end of the quarter. Yeah, we're going to be working on this as it is. We're going to keep working on this, I mean. And yeah, so we're working with some great teams. You might have heard the 2 teams on the pitch demo yesterday, Abstract and 42. They're on the Builders Program. We have 3 other teams that were there as well. They were also on the Builds program. And yeah, there's more to come. We're pretty excited working with all these teams, and we want to keep doing this. And so we have an application window. We take in teams on a quarterly basis for the accelerator track. If you're a founder, the deadline is June 12th. And you can apply, and we will have an introductory call with you, basically like a pitch deck, and we'll try to understand what you guys are building and see if it's a good fit. Thank you for your time. Thanks for listening. Have a nice day. Hi, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And we actually have one question for you.
Sure.
It is, do you have any recommendations how Web3 companies can safely raise seed funding?
Yeah, have a good founding team. I mean, there was a whole panel about this yesterday, right? Like, have a good founding team and a product. But I think most importantly is just the capability of a team to pivot when needed. Yeah, I mean, it's hard right now. You have the good product, but really, the VCs, it's a job interview. That's what it is. Yeah,
All right.
that's what I think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noam.